Hello, and welcome to Backseat Chats with Fisher and Grace.
Yep. So now we're going to move on to our Dylan Thomas poems. And the first one that we have is I Have Longed to Move Away, which the title itself refers to the author's life, as Dylan Thomas, during his early childhood and most of his life, he moved around a lot. So the title could infer that the narrator is done with a physical or metaphorical place or time in his life. So he's longing to move away from that or to move on. And so the rest of the poem concludes with, he uses the personal pronoun I a lot to infer that it is his life and not a made-up setting or some kind of narrative. He also uses the symbol of a lie. So there's a specific lie, and he carries the metaphor throughout the entire poem that the lie is a physical thing, that it could, he uses hiss, burn down, that it has physical change to it. So the lie could symbolize some kind of situation that he was in, or I took it as maybe it was a very negative memory in his life, like something that had occurred maybe in terms of, I don't know, a murder maybe, or it could really mean any negative thing, and he's trying to move away from that. So tying it to the Scarlet Letter, in that book it mentions that Hester is chained to the town because of a very negative effect that has happened in her life. And so it could mean that he is mentally chained to a certain location because of some horrific event that occurred there. And so it's, like, hard for him to move on. And there's a fulcrum in the middle of the two stanzas where it says, he repeats the phrase, I have longed to move away, quite often, but at the beginning of the second stanza, he says, I have longed to move away, but am afraid. So it's the first kind of however of his emotion. So he says, like, instead of the whole, I have longed to move away, I'm determined to get out of here, he mentions that there is something stopping him, and it is his own personal anguish.
Alright. Just going back to the lie.
Mm-hmm.
He mentions the lie 3 different times throughout the poem. Do you think that it's a different lie for any of the 3?
I think it may be a continued version of the lie, because as the poem goes on, it starts to become, he makes it seem like a more horrific event. It goes from just being like, in the beginning he describes it as like kind of a bee, like it's just around, it's a nuisance, but it's not directly affecting him. But as it goes on, it talks about the lie like burning down times of his life and how he would love to escape it. And he talks about death's like warm fuzzy embrace as like his only relief. So I guess it's maybe the way that I said it was maybe a murder is like the guilt and the memory are starting to eat away at him, to where it's like at first it was just kind of in the back of his mind, it was a nuisance, but it begins to become worse and worse as time goes on. So the like longing to move away becomes more desperate than it does just a need.
Right. Do you think in the last stanza he asks himself, shall I fall to death's feather? And for by those I would not care to die. And he's talking about that, and do you think that he's starting to contemplate suicide, that the death's eating him up that much? And then he goes on to say right after that, half conviction and half lie. I sort of took that as he wants to kill himself, but he's also afraid that a piece like that would be a lie, and he doesn't want to live or die in that lie.
I think he is like getting, like I said before, very desperate to avoid the lie that is eating away at him. So when he says he would like to die, that it would be at half of his own conviction, but also by the lie. So technically, say if another person heard about it, they would say, oh, it was maybe that killed him. So I guess he doesn't want to die knowing that it was ever resolved, or that it was kind of a coward's way out to what he was facing. So I just believe that the poem is just referencing how he just wants to get away, and he needs to leave the life that he's living. And I don't think he wants to kill himself, but he thinks that it might be the only option.
very much like Dimsdale's situation,
Yes.
where he's that it's eating him up so much he gets sick and it's just tearing him apart. And he gets down and he finally confesses. He's at peace, but then he does die. He kind of gets a little bit of both, and I think that's a lot what the speaker in this poem would like.
Okay, good.
Thank you for watching. This has been Backseat Chats with Fisher and Grace. Signing